Hi guys, welcome back to Statistics with Mr. Robeson. Today we are still looking at experiment design. We're looking at some special things that can happen in experiments. Specifically, we're going to take a look at placebos, factors and levels, blinding, blocking, and matched pairs experiments. All right, so a placebo. So oftentimes when we're doing experiments with drugs or maybe with some other things, right, we have a treatment that has no active ingredient but is otherwise looks exactly the same, acts exactly the same, and usually they don't even know if it's different or not. All right, this is called a placebo. All right, it's like a fake drug. Like there's nothing inside the pill. All right. Now there is an effect which sometimes happens when people take a placebo is they think that they're taking the real drug, so they get better anyway, and this is called the placebo effect. So some subjects in experiments will respond favorably to any treatment, even an inactive treatment. So if I just give you a pill that and tell you that this is going to make you feel better and you take the pill and you think, well, yeah, I do kind of feel a little better. That's the placebo effect if that pill had nothing in it. All right, so another example here, does taking vitamin D help with memory and concentration? So we have 500 students at the same high school. They are given a baseline memory test and then randomly assigned to one of two groups. Students take a vitamin D supplement each day for 1 week. Group 2, students take a placebo that looks the same as the actual supplement each day for 1 week. All students are then given the memory test again. Students who take the vitamin D score an average of 12% better. Students who take the placebo score an average of 8% better. All right, so even though these students in the placebo group were not given anything that was supposed to help them with their memory, they still did 8% better. Right? So maybe just telling them that they're taking something that might help with their memory made them do better, or maybe just because they took the test before, they were now better at test taking, and they did 8% better the second time. All right, let's do a brief little diagram of how this would look. All right, so we would start with, let's see, was it 200 students? 500 students. We have a lot of students this time. So we've got 500 students. We're going to randomly put them into one of two groups. All right, and again, we'd have to probably say how we would randomly do this, but they didn't state it, so we'll just say randomly for now. But again, if this was the AP exam, we would want to write out how they did that randomly, not just saying the word randomly. That doesn't get you credit. So we got vitamin D, and this would be probably half of them, so that would be 250 people. And this would be the placebo. Oops, CEBO. And this would also be 250. And after 1 week, we would test each again. So we were testing here. And then we test here. And this is after 1 week. And then we compared. All right, so again, there's our experiment design. So we've got a comparison, we've got a control. The control is that they are all students. So we're trying to get a sample that's as similar as possible. We are randomly setting them to groups, so there's our randomization, and the replication is our large sample sizes. All right, the next thing that we're going over with experiment design is factors and levels. So sometimes when you do experiments, they have multiple treatments. And these multiple treatments are often different factors. All right, so a factor is a variable that is manipulated and may cause change in the response variable. All right, so it's really like what are different things that are being measured within the experiment. We're trying different treatments. Those different treatments are often different factors. Each factor can be broken down into multiple levels. So we have factors here as the headings, and then level 1, level 2, level 3 down below. So if we had 2 factors and 3 levels for each, that's a total of 2 times 3 or 6 total treatments. All right, so let's take a look at this experiment. The 5-second rule. Hopefully you've all heard of the 5-second rule before. It's when you drop food on the floor. The old adage says you have 5 seconds to pick it up. And if it's after that, you don't want to eat it. But if it's less than 5 seconds, it's okay to eat still. All right, so researchers use apples, bread with butter, and gummy bears. They dropped the food onto 4 different surfaces, so 4 different types of floor. We have stainless steel, that'd be like around your sink, ceramic tile, wood, and carpet. They waited 4 different lengths of time: 1 second, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, and 300 seconds. Oh boy. They used 2 types of bacteria, A and B. They had longer scientific names. We're just going to call them A and B. The researchers spread the bacteria on different surfaces and started dropping foods. List the factors and the number of levels for each. So one factor, let's see, the researchers used apple, bread with butter, and gummy bear. So one factor is the foods. So again, we're rewriting factors here. So we got the foods. And that had 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. All right. Another factor was the type of floor or the surface. All right. And they could drop it onto stainless steel, ceramic tile, wood, or carpet. So there's 4 levels there. Next up, we had 4 different lengths of time. So another factor was how much time they let it sit. And it was 1 second, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, or 300 seconds. So we had 4 levels there. And then finally, we have 2 types of bacteria. All right, so those 2 different types would also be 2 different levels. So we got a lot of different factors. We're doing an experiment with 4 different factors. And we've got 4 levels, 4 levels, 4 levels, and 2 levels. Oh boy. So how many different treatments were included? All right, so a treatment would be, maybe we can do this first. List 2 treatments. So a treatment would be if we put one of each thing together. So if we dropped an apple on, say, the wood floor for 5 seconds with bacteria A, that would be an example treatment. All right, probably the grossest one would be the bread with butter on the carpet for 300 seconds, the longest amount of time, with bacteria. I don't know which one's worse, A or B. Let's just go with B this time. But that's another example of the treatment. If we put all 4 of these factors together, that is a treatment. So how many treatments do we have? Well, we had 4 choices for the first one, times 4 choices for the surface, times 4 choices for the time, times 2 choices for the bacteria. This is a lot. Right? If we do multiply those out, which as good mathematicians we probably should, we get 128 different treatments. It would take a long time to do this experiment because some of them were waiting 30 seconds. Like it's going to be a very long experiment. That's why we have more than one researcher usually when we do experiments. All right, next up, blinding. No, we are not poking your eyes out, but oftentimes we don't want subjects to know what they're taking. Like we don't tell them ahead of time whether they're taking the placebo or they're taking the real pill, and that is a type of blinding. So if only the subjects don't know, that is single blind. Right? Usually it's just the subjects that don't know. Right? If we really want to do a good experiment, though, we use what's called double blinding. So then the subjects don't know, and those that are doing the measuring and interacting with the subjects also don't know. Particularly the ones that's measuring the response in the end. Often it's the same person that's interacting with them and measuring this response, but the one that measures the response is the one that matters here in the end. So double blinding, 2 things don't know, the subjects don't know, and those that measure the response don't know. Single blinding, generally it's just the subjects that don't know. It could just be just the researchers as well, but that would be odd. All right, so here's our experiment. Do magnets repel pain? All right, so I think my dad probably believes in this. He's old and kooky like that. A total of 50 patients with chronic pain were recruited for a study. A doctor identified a painful site on each patient and asked him or her to rate the pain on a scale of 0, as in no pain, to 10, very severe pain. Then the doctor selected a sealed envelope containing a magnet at random from a mixture of active and inactive magnets. The chosen magnet was applied to the site of pain for 45 minutes. After being treated, each patient was again asked to rate the level of pain from 0 to 10. So what is the blinding that's going on here? All right. So first question, does the patient know if they're getting a real magnet or a fake magnet? Probably not. So the subject doesn't know. So the subject is blind because they don't know if they have a real magnet or not. All right. Also, all right, so then the doctor selected a sealed envelope containing a magnet at random from a mixture of active and inactive magnets. All right, so the doctor is also blind. So somebody else put these guys into envelopes. So he doesn't know either. So he doesn't know if the magnet is active. All right, somebody else in the back does know, and that somebody else is keeping track. So when the doctor reports the results to that somebody else, then that somebody else will be like, okay, I'm going to put this in the active magnet group, or I'm going to put this in the inactive magnet group. So since neither of these two things know, this is a double blind. Neither person knows. So like here's our subject, that's 1. Here's our doctor, that's 2. So that makes this double blind. So because they are both without sight of what's happening. All right, next experiment design tool we have is called blocking. All right, so this is often something we want to do. It kind of works with stratified samples. So strata and blocking are very similar. We are grouping the experimental units like before the experiment based on some sort of common trait that may affect the response. All right, so something that may affect the response to the treatment. Gender is a popular one. Age is another way to block. All right, so again, depending on what you're working with, there's plenty of other things you can block based off of. All right, which we'll see in an example here. So with the randomized block design, what generally happens is people are broken up, or the experimental units are broken up into blocks, and then they are randomly assigned to each treatment from within each block. So like we have, say, a block of men and a block of women. And then from this, they will be split up into the 2 different groups. Some will get the treatment, and some would get, like, say, the placebo or a different treatment. And same with the women. All right, so we're breaking up within each block, and we would do this randomly. And again, if it was the AP exam, we would have to explain that we put all the treatments on a sheet of paper and placebo on a sheet of paper. We probably wouldn't write that out. We'd probably put A and B, and like the A group would be treatments and the B group would be placebo, and they'd be picking out papers that say A and B from a hat or something. That'd be an easy way to do it. All right, so let's take a look at another example. So a mobile phone company is considering 2 different keyboard designs. So we got the little wider keyboard design and the little more close keyboard design, compact keyboard design. For its new phones, the company decides to perform an experiment to compare the design using 100 volunteers. The response variable is typing speed. So we're going to measure the typing speed in words per minute. 70 of the volunteers already use a phone similar, and 30 use a different phone. So it looks like we got 2 different specific traits happening here. How could this be taken into account using blocking? Well, I would say that 70 would be in one block, and then that 30 would be in another block. And so these guys already had that kind of phone, and these guys were new to it. And then within each block, we would probably want to check keyboard A and keyboard B and see how they do. Right, now the question is, why do we want to do that? Well, if we just took random samples, we might end up with 50 people in one sample that already use this phone type, and they're already really good at it. Right? And then their times would be faster because they're used to using that phone type, and the other group, they'd never used that phone type, their times would be slower. All right, so we want to block first, or stratify first, because this really is just a stratified a sample kind of thing. All right, so we're blocking first, and then we're doing each one from each block. And that's how blocking works. Next up, a very specific type of blocking is when you make blocks that are just 2 people big. All and then each one does something, or it's just one person, a block of one. All right, so common for comparing two treatments, sometimes two very similar experimental units are paired, and the two treatments are randomly assigned in each pair. Other times, each experimental unit receives both treatments in a random order. All right, and when we say we're in a random order, often we just flip a coin. So flip a coin to see which thing you're going to do first. All right. So again, we have two things that are similar. We put them together. So like in each block, we have person A and B, and one of them will do the treatment. One of them will do, I don't know, we'll call it treatment 1. The other one would do treatment 2. So we have two subjects that are very similar to each other that are trying two different treatments and seeing how it affects each one. All right, so let's take a look at our example here. So classical music helps with math, does it? It used to be a thing when I was in high school that they thought playing classical music helped you with math. It did not. In a math class of 30 students, the teacher wants to know if listening to music while testing will help students' performance. A math test is designed to be used as a response variable. So they are being graded on the math test, and that's what we're going to check. How could this experiment be done using a matched pairs design? So if we didn't use a matched pairs design and we had, say, 15 people in the room with classical music and 15 people in the room not with classical music, maybe all the smart kids or maybe all the people that have A's would end up being in the classical music room, and maybe all the people that don't have A's would end up being in the other room, and then we'd be like, whoa, look, these people in the classical music room all did really, really well. Right? But that's a form of selection bias, really, because our samples are not being selected in a good way. So what we could do is we could order the students by their grade in math. So like two people with A's go together, two people with B's go together. So we got two A's and like two B's and then like two C's and so on. And then within each group, we have one listen to the music and test and one without music. All right. And that's how this would work. And we do the same thing here with B. We do the same thing here with the C's. So with all the different pairs, we could do that. And that gives us our match pair design. That way we are comparing people that are like each other to each other. So like an A is getting compared to an A B is getting compared to a B, and so on. So we're not comparing someone that has a D with an A because the person with an A is probably going to do better. So that's why we do match pairs. It's a really good thing if you can do it. All right, so let's go back to our cell phones and driving experiment. So we looked at, does talking on a hands-free cell phone distract drivers? How can a similar experiment be designed using match pairs? All right, so a really easy way to do match pairs is you have each individual do both things. So that's what we're going to try and do. So each individual will drive the course while on the phone and while not on the phone. All right, now the problem comes in if we have all of them do it on the phone first, then off the phone second. We don't know if the phone is the difference or if they've just gotten better at driving the course because they know what to expect because it's the same course. So what we have to do is we have to randomly choose the order. So the way we do that is we flip a coin for each individual to see which one they will do first. All right, so it may be if they get heads, they'll be on the phone, and if they get tails, it would be no phone. All right, and then after they do the first time through, they'll go and do the second time through. So if I flipped a coin and got heads, then I would be talking on the hands-free phone the first time I went through the course, and then the second time I went through the course, maybe like an hour later, maybe immediately afterwards, I would do it with no phone. But that's how we can make this match paired. Right? We like match paired experiments. If we can make things match paired, we try and make things match paired. All right, so some things to consider. We just went over all of these things with our experiments. So we must have some sort of randomization. If we can block or match paired, if that's immediately obvious to do that, then we try and do that. If we can make something blind or double blind, so the subjects don't know which treatment they're getting, we do that. That's not always possible. I mean, in the last experiment, you know whether you're on the phone or not. That's not really possible, right? We usually have some sort of placebo or a control group. We don't have to, though. Like, we can just do 2 different treatments and not have a placebo. But a placebo is considered a treatment. But we could just do 1 treatment, 2 treatment. They could just take 2 different drugs and not compare to a placebo. But usually we want to compare to a placebo if we can. All right. Each treatment must be included in the experiment. We can't just leave it out. Each factor and each level. So remember, factors are different parts of a treatment, and levels are breaking down factors even more. Similarly sized treatment groups should be included. So both groups should be of the same size for each treatment, or all 3 treatments, whatever. And confounding and lurking variables. So we're going to go over that in the next one. So a confounding variable is a variable that could affect the outcome and the input. So it could affect other things. Lurking variables or some other variables in the background that could be causing things to happen. But again, we'll go over that in the next one. All right, so I'll post these links to more help in the chat if you want. I've also posted links on Khan Academy and assigned that. You don't have to do it, but you can. It is available if you want more help. All right, and that's what we covered today. So next one should be a little bit shorter. We'll be going over confounding variables and statistical significance. Bye.